I hope that that's not going to play out in how we answer the questions. And very digestible for everyone. But as ever, time is short when you present, and it's my role now to pick out some of the things that you said and try to do a little bit of a deeper dive into some of those key points, find out where there are agreements. Also, sometimes there may be areas or issues that we don't necessarily, or we might have different approaches, and it's also good to bring those to the floor. So I would encourage you to, where necessary, politely disagree with each other, okay? So my first question would be very much around the landscape of quantum standards and how we are currently mapping the standardization needs of each of the quantum families of technologies. You know, we say quantum, but actually quantum, as we've seen in all of your presentations, encompasses quantum computing, the algorithms that are run on quantum computers, sensing and metrology, communications. So, and that's before we even get down to the deeper layers of enabling technologies that we probably also need to find some standardization mechanisms for. So given this global landscape, and Minghan, you spoke about JTC and how that is one of the arenas in which those different technologies are actually coming together, and standardization is looking at the ecosystem as a whole rather than different or separate component parts. Could we start with you then and ask you, within China, within your region, within your area of influence, where are you seeing standards being more mature, and where do you see some of the gaps? Minghan, that's to you first, please.
Okay, thank you, Tanya. And I think it's a good question because the quantum technology is actually a very wide scope. It includes, actually it's not only the quantum communication, the sensing, and the computing. It also has some quantum enabling technology or the quantum network or the interface with the other technologies. It's quite wide area. And so when we talk about the standardization, it also have the different category for different aspect. And so far, according to my knowledge, the quantum communication is absolutely the most mature so far, and both in the technical readiness and also the standards. Because according to the presentation, you can tell the ITU, IEC, and ISO also all do the standardization about the QuIC, quantum communications. And the quantum computing is still in the research step. I mean, in the laboratory, because it has different technical solutions, like for the photons, the superconducting, and also the atom. So far, no one can tell can give an answer which technical solution is the final answer. And very probably at the end, it will be a very hybrid system because different technical solutions have this advantage. So for the quantum computing, the standardization is mainly focused on the terminology and the benchmark, the supply chain, not for the specific technology itself. That's for the quantum computing. And for the quantum sensing is kind of complex because we have different physical parameter need to do the measurement, like the time or the gravity, the magnetic force. So for different physical parameters, you have to use the different technology to do the measurement. And some of them is mature, like for the time, we can have a very accurate time measurement. And for those kind of standard, I think it is become more and more mature and is ready for the standardization. But still, for the like for the gravity or for some other quantum sensing, it still needs some time to do the research. So that's my answer. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's cue you, Jaewan, because I think that's the issue of benchmarking as well, and the role of benchmarking within standards, which you mentioned in your presentation.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Minghan Lee. And so the quantum communication is most mature technology right now, and the quantum computing, still many different platforms are struggling to compete with each other. But I originally thought that maybe there might be just one or two final winner, but nowadays I think each different platform has a different advantages. So maybe they are going to get together with also classical computation, so-called hybrid computation. So in that sense, that we need to connect all these things. How do we connect them? That's again maybe photon and some electromagnetic waves, electromagnetic waveguide, and so on. So in that sense, quantum communication technology standardization is most urgent and very important for the future. And also, in addition to this the consideration, the quantum technology is strongly dependent. I mean, governed by the nature itself. So we don't have much thing to get around the nature. So we have to adapt to our technology to nature, what nature dictates. So in that sense, our standardization all will be strongly dependent on what basic science will provide in the future. And also, in that sense, the sensing, quantum sensing, we have a wide spectrum of different things, different purposes, different methodologies, and so on. So, but in that one, again, the photon detection and photon manipulation, these are most important part for either for a distributed quantum computing or quantum communication and quantum repeaters and so on. So that's why our the QuIC's initial stage working groups adopted this 5 out of 8 projects are all quantum communications. This will find a wide usage in spectrum. So, and also another one is quantum computing. We have to go through the different platforms and also the hybridization with the classical computing. And the important part is how to make computer programs. Like right now, the Gisc and Penny Lane, and they are most dominant ones. But people are developing new use cases and new algorithms and so on. But we have to deploy this for millions of qubits in the future. Human being cannot do that. So we have to adopt the AI to do these things. So how can he, for example, in classical digital computing, we went through the Fortran 4, Fortran 77, Fortran 90, scientific Fortran C, C++, and so on. So similar kind of standardization will occur in how to control computers. So, but these are, we cannot dictate what to do. I think the market will come up with the ideas. So that's why we are working on the de facto standardization organization on top of this official institute. I mean, Yeah.
And just to pick up on something you've said earlier, Jaewan, it's the market, but it's also nature that's going to tell us what the limits of what is actually possible. Kazutomo-san, I'd like to bring you in because you actually mentioned that it's actually the standardization of middleware that is going to accelerate the standardization of other layers. Now, you were specifically referring, as Homer mentioned, to quantum computing, but do you also see that in the other domains? Do you also see that there is a critical layer that needs to be standardized before other things can take their place in the ecosystem?
Yes, thank you very much. There have been already plenty fruitful discussions, so I have very little thing to talk, but I acknowledge, as I presented just before, the quantum computing standardization is currently the least advanced. The maturity of quantum computing is still in the early stages, and we believe that the benchmarks is crucial as a means of social implementation and R&D promotion. And we need to work for social implementation of quantum technologies. So QStar is working for on a use case-driven approach and middleware standardization to bridge this quantum computing standardization gap.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Homer, I'd like to bring you in on a slightly different question, which is around the process and the philosophy of building standards. So, again, you know, we've heard from QuINSA and you know from QuIC, the committee groups from QuINSA and QuIC's working groups are very much a ground-up approach, you know, with industry coming together and saying, these are the things that we need to prioritize. These are the key, the core components that need to be present in the standards. And then there is a debate around those, and we bring research together, and the different standardization organizations to take those into standards proper. And also Minghan Li addressed how milestones align against, for example, the EU and US roadmaps. Again, you know, very, very interesting how to see the alignment between different regions. But coming back to the approaches, should we focus on specific use cases, for example, in each of those domains? Homer, start with you, please.
Yes. The process to initiate a work item in a standardization body, because we are talking about this process, we can adopt a mixed approach. First, we have the stakeholders, like the national governments, European Commission in our case, in Europe, and the people that are participating in SDOs that initiate a work item based on identifying needs. For example, nowadays, European Union wants to focus on the satellite domain. So it pushes the SDOs to work on that, initiate standards, technical reports, to support the interconnection of satellite with ground stations. This is one aspect, the top-down. So a big player, European Commission, is pushing the SDOs to support this, not only European Commission, but ESA as well. But there is another approach. I mean, what is happening down in the industry level. So the companies are working daily on quantum technologies, and they confront problems. Okay, they confront interoperability issues. They want to go to the market, and we see the problems. So they see that how to connect a QKD with a router or an encryptor, or how to interconnect two different QKD from different vendors. So these are the needs they identify every day. So in that case, the industry should go from the bottom up and influence somehow and ask the SDOs to initiate work items, solve their problems. This is what we are doing in QuiC in work group. We are trying to listen through surveys, through discussions, etc. Listen about the needs and somehow to inform the SDOs about what is happening down there. Let me tell you that recently, I mean, months ago already, QuiC has established a relationship with JTC22. I was in Madrid a few days ago, and we decided there to set up a liaison officer of JTC22 with QuiC, meaning that Sensenelec wants to listen to the industry part. So, in order to answer your question, the optimum approach is a mix. We have to listen what the governments wants to achieve, the regulations, what exactly they want, and initiate technical reports and standards in order to answer to their challenges and their needs. And from the other side, we have also to listen to what the industry is doing and somehow push their needs into the SDOs. Of course, in Europe, we want the whole thing, the whole work to be conducted within the SDOs and not allow the industry to set up de facto standards and then do it. So everything, if there is a need, we want this to communicate it as up to the SDO and the SDO to decide if it's something that has a priority, because as I said, the resources are not unlimited, so this is the main issue. Thanks.
Thank you. And just on that point, we actually do have another hat while we're here, where we're coordinating something called INSTAR, which is an initiative that is supporting the European Commission in developing their international digital partnerships. And a key part of those international digital partnerships with, for example, Korea and Japan, but also Australia, Canada, is the role of standards and building bridges. So it's not just about the local or regional SDOs, it's also about making sure that those map on and there can be international conversations at the higher level, standardization in those fora as well. So could I maybe invite the colleagues who to agree or to provide some, or disagree if necessary, but to provide a different perspective on this, whether it's top-down, bottom-up approach? I mean, Hanli, perhaps if you could share what it's like in China, for example.
Okay, you mean the standardization from top to down, or from my perspective, I think both of the way have their values. You know, in China we have different standardizations. We have the from top to down. We have national standardization, industrial standardization, and group standardization. And the scope of the standard are different. You know, for the national standardization, if you have a broader scope, and for the group standardization, maybe it's only regular some specific group, or for some local standardization, only can be used in Shanghai or in Beijing. And the higher level standard you are trying to work out, which means you have more company or more institute need to negotiate or need to circulate. As a result of that, the content of the standard will be more high level. And if you want to do the standard research for some specific scenarios, then it's better to do the industrial standard for like cryptography or for like financial scenarios than in the industrial standard. And for some very specific use case, maybe it's fit in the group standards. And that's how it works in China. So if you want to build a standard system, then the better way is to from top to down. And if you want to have a standard to be used not immediately, if you want to have a standard to be used quickly to solve some market problem, then we will start from a group standards. Then it should from bottom to up. So both of these ways are working in China's standards work. And for the international standard, so far I think mostly is from top to down, because different countries have different situation, especially if you want to do the standard about the certification. I think it's not going to happen in the international standard because it's very strong regulation. So for the international standard, I think mostly it works from top to down so far. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So essentially, at national level, it's perhaps more framework, so something more general. But if you want a problem solved, go bottom up. That's probably quite common to everyone. Kazutomo-san, would you agree with that? I mean, you're also an industry association, or not association, but you represent industry, so you're definitely bottom up. How do you interact with maybe national initiatives or international initiatives?
Yes, of course. QStar believes a hybrid strategy combining top-down and industry-driven bottom-up approaches is the most effective way to develop standards in this new field. QStar promotes an approach where specific use case requirements and technical insight from industry are gathered bottom-up, and then standards are established through international standardization bodies like JTC3, thereby maintaining global consistency. This aims to achieve both rapid social implementation and international compatibility alongside the long-term sustainability of the technology.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I have some wild idea for.
We like wild ideas.
Yeah. I'm a physicist, and maybe a lot of us are physicists, and and in physics we have a very good model for the kind of a de facto standardization that is that started with the Los Alamos National Laboratory archive. It has no barrier at all, and people are exchanging ideas freely, and it boost the idea exchange among the people, experts and non-experts. Especially that was very effective, efficient, and clear and transparent among the physicists and computer scientists, actually. And so what we are dealing with here is quantum information technology. So a lot of people might develop their own ideas, and so the reason we established the QuIC was to without much barrier to make a very quick, efficient exchange of ideas, and maybe we can take some ideas of this archive or Wikipedia, something like that. Then. Right now, people are exchanging ideas and establishing standardization in nationwide, but we need to develop this technology very quickly for globally. So maybe we have to go toward some kind of a archive or Wikipedia kind of a platform to.
I think, Jaewan, that's exactly why we're here at Gisc. So it's the call to action, isn't it, to make sure that it's not another 365 days before we come back and share how we've progressed individually, but what mechanisms do we put in play so that we can progress collaboratively in these next intervening 365 days?
Yeah, let me clarify your idea. So you suggest to create a repository of the needs that can be standardized. This is what you suggest?
Yeah, okay. I'm not from industry, but long time ago I worked for Samsung, but not secrets. But when we make something, some inventions and so on, we develop two different kinds of documents. One is patent. It's a secret, and it has a very exclusive right. But standard, we want to share, and we want to lead whole technology experts into a certain better direction. So these two are not opposite, but they complement each other. So patent, maybe you can keep it with yourself, but for standard, we can help each other for fair competition. So, and that's exactly the spirit of archive and Wikipedia. So maybe whether we can import that kind of ideas into our standardization, because right now most of standardization institutes, it takes many days and very some high barrier communications and so on. So maybe we have to go into such an effort to develop some kind of archive or Wikipedia kind of thing. Yeah.
I fully understand. The main issue here is we don't have unlimited resources, human resources, to develop everything. So in that case, and Tanya knows it very well, in Instar, we try somehow to solve this problem. What does it mean? It means we try to create a list, a priority list, to identify the most urgent issues. Okay, from we have recorded all the potential needs based on literature and what is written out there, and through discussions with experts and with other countries, South Korea, we try to identify the most urgent in order to work together to solve it. Yeah. So this is also an important aspect as well. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and for anyone who wants to, you can see those on the website. There's the priority, the PICS. Remind me what that stands for. The priority. International cooperation in standards. There you go. Let's look in the spirit of looking forward. Quantum brings many benefits. We hope it's going to be bringing many benefits to society and to industry, but it's also undoubtedly going to bring some challenges. We need to keep ourselves safe in a future where bad actors may have capabilities that are as strong or stronger than the ones we ourselves possess. And we can see that with the harvest now, decrypt later activity that's happening, but there are very many other threats. So given this, and given that industry has to prepare now, I was at the Financial Conduct Authority in London a few weeks ago, and that's the UK regulator for the financial services. And there was a very, very clear message there that the financial sector cannot wait until there is a quantum computer available. The financial sector needs to act now to make sure that its systems are safe and compliant, and that some of the solution involves hybridization, understanding what it means from a network perspective. It involves things like looking at KQD or PQC, but it also involves preparing and training people. I think, Homer, you mentioned this. But Kazutomo-san, you mentioned something that I thought was really interesting from a Japanese perspective, which was forgive me if I misunderstood, but I understood it to be as an SLR, a social readiness level. So you mentioned technology readiness levels, you mentioned the business readiness level, but you also mentioned the SLR. Could you, I think that's an incredibly powerful concept that certainly resonates with the European view of doing things. You know, we do things that are good for industry, but they also have to be good for society. Could you expand a little bit, please, on that concept of SLR in relation to standards in computing, in quantum computing?
Yes, thank you very much. Schuster is put on importance for the social implementation of quantum technologies. So, what should we do to do that? So we have been developed, for example, a business readiness level, BRL, governance readiness level, with the Japanese government. So we are taking this concept into JTC3 as soon as possible, and try to get understanding within JTC3, because in JTC3, for example, application benchmarks and algorithm benchmarks and hardware benchmarks are considered to be proceeded, but we believe that the importance is to make social implementation of the quantum technology as soon as possible. So for this purpose, we need to consider BRL or some other aspect other than the technological benchmarks.
Thank you. Minghan Li, would you like to take up that question? What are we doing, or what are you doing in China to prepare more broadly for that quantum future from a standardization perspective, but also more broadly, like training people to be able to understand how those standards affect what their daily lives are going to be like?
Okay, at the beginning of my answer, I would like to say the quantum computing threat. I don't want to treat it as a very horrible threat. You know, for the according to the history of the human, the information security part, we always facing the threat. Mm-hmm. The power of classical computing is developed really fast. In the past decades, like 2 times once a year. So that's why we do the immigration from the AES 128 to the 256, to RSA to the 2048. We're always facing the threat. And the only different thing is the quantum computing follows another different technical solution. And it shows potential power. It can break like RSA or some algorithm. But now we have the PQC. PQC is another kind of RSA 2048. It's another algorithm to defend the quantum computing. And QKD is another way, but it follows the physical logic to do the defense. So I think it's very nature and common according to the whole development history of the human. And in China, and we facing the quantum computing threat, in China we choose the both way, the PQC and the QKDs. Mm-hmm. And from my perspective, any country, if you have the human resource and the research resource, we should choose both ways. Because so far, all the known PQC can only defend the quantum algorithm, the known quantum algorithm. We cannot guarantee that it can defend all the quantum computing attack. So maybe in 10 or 20 years, some specific PQC shows a backdoor or another some problem. I need to put some patchy on it. And the QKD is more expensive and it needs infrastructure, but it can guarantee the QKD can defend all the quantum computing attack. So both of the, and they have the different features. So in the future of China's information security, we will choose a hybrid way, like to use the QKD backbone to transmit the QKD keys, and for the long-haul security, and for the certification or the last kilometers use the PQC to do that. But so far, the PQC algorithm is proposed from by American, and so some other countries is trying to figure out their own PQC algorithm. But finally, we need an international standard to have a list of the PQC, and in this period of time, the QKD can shows its power to do the defense. So that's my response to the question. Yeah.
Thank you. So resilience essentially by having a multi-pronged approach to whatever's going to happen next, and not necessarily having one solution now that may not necessarily be appropriate for the future. Very good. So we have 12 minutes left on the panel, so I'd like to look at some calls to action for the experts that we have here present, but also for ourselves, for our governments, for industry. So I'm going to tell you my questions in advance so you can think of them, and then I will call on you to provide your thoughts. So the first is, what single risk could most delay quantum safe adoption, general, whether it's computing, communication, sensing, metrology, in your region next year, or let's say in the near term, in the near to medium term, and what action do you think stakeholders, and if you could name the stakeholders, government, investors, industry, researchers, it would be very helpful. What action should they take to mitigate that risk of delay? And I think, Jaewan, if I start with you, please.
Yes. Maybe the most significant risk threat might be the speed of profitable market growth. Mm-hmm. And for quantum computing, we need maybe millions of qubits to solve some significant and meaningful problems, but we are struggling with a Gisc level, so a few hundred or 1,000 qubits, and it needs a huge effort, maybe 10 years. Then whether market can wait for that or not, and so we might expect some kind of winter. As you know, the AI, it went through 2 or 3 winters, very severe winters. Now quantum, because of maturity of a market, we might expect some winter. How can we survive through the winter? That is a problem. And also for the quantum communication, the point-to-point QKD, that can provide absolute security, no matter how. But PQC is very efficient, and but the PQC, we cannot be sure. Maybe some genius can come up with some solution for the mathematical problems, or the quantum computer may do something. But QKD is the absolute, will provide absolute security. But right now, point-point link is the all we can have right now, and whether market can wait for next generation with a quantum repeater. So market, I mean, the maturity, that is very big risk for us. Yeah.
Thank you. Homer.
Yes. Well, I'm not going to discuss quantum computing because for quantum computing the most urgent and the issue is the benchmarking. So in order to increase the trust to the vendors, this is very important. And the risk there is not to allow one vendor to lead this benchmarking framework. We need an agreement on the benchmarking framework. I'm going to discuss the urgent issue, which has to do with the security aspect. The elephant in the room, the monster in the room, is not only quantum computing that will break the RSA codes and all these things. We have two elephants in the room. One is quantum computing, that we expect this to come, but we have another one, sometimes we underestimate it, which is the AI. Already, the big vendors have released specialized agents able to identify risks in the network and provide information to hackers, etc., etc. So the answer is that we have to act ASAP. We can't wait for QKD to solve the problem, so we have to prioritize and implement PQC now. Okay, not yesterday, but now. And wait for QKD to get to be more mature in order to implement it. But in order to trust QKD, we need what I described in my presentation. We need someone to certify the security and the proof of stability of these networks. Already ETSI has released recently, again, the common criteria, which is a good initial starting, which indicates the specs in order the specs that a QKD system can adopt in order to start certification. But certification is urgent in order to have devices that we can trust and we can utilize, because it's not only application of QKD in networks, but we have to increase sustainability of these networks. Who is going to fund these networks? Only the government. We can't expect only from governments to do it. So the certifications, we open the door to private investors, to buyers, okay, in order to start. If this happens, then the QKD will come up. But the role of QKD, again, is not a system that can solve the security problem, because the last mile, as we call it, can't be solved by QKD. I mean, the user with the encryptor, this distance can't be solved by QKD. In that case, we have to invent PQC, or there are other methods like distributed symmetry key establishment, DSK, which is a new also solution that we work on that as well, that can solve the problem. QKD is to solve governmental networks, maybe defense networks, but it's not necessary and it's not important for some use cases to have QKD networks. For example, if you want to have chatting with your mother, it's not okay. You can use it PQC, that's fine, no problem at all. So we have to identify the roles of PQC, DSK, or QKD, and start implementing these use cases. And of course, again, we have to increase the trust on the QKD systems. This is not the case through the certification. So we have to support, for example, the effort ETSI is doing. There is a new technical committee in ETSI now, so you probably you are participating there. And I am aware that the Korean people that are participating in ETSI are willing to lead the certification aspect, meaning that the South Korean people have understood the necessity, the importance.
Thank you, Homer. We'll pass on because we've only got a few more minutes, and I want to hear what Minghan Lee has to say.
Okay, I think the most risk in the future is we cannot find enough the motivation from the market, because I'm from the quantum communication, so my answer mainly focus on the quantum communication network. Because the investor engagement for the security is very special, because you spend money and really hard to calculate the benefit. And the value of the QKD network somehow depends on the development of the quantum computers. So that's the situation. And both the Euro QCI and China's Citizen QCN, most of the investigation is from the public fundings. So, but it cannot last for all the time. Finally, it need to have the benefit from the market, or it has to be useful for the end users. So far, we can say, oh, we are do the preparation for the prepare for the defense for the quantum computing. But what about after 10 years or 20 years? And finally, this infrastructure needs to be used, needs to show its value. And the QKD only used for the cryptography, and the cryptography is only a very small part of the ICT. So how to enlarge the value of the network I think it is a common problem. We all facing this problem. So I think that's why that's the problem we need to fix. And for the government or for the policymaker, I think they should lead the market or lead the users, or for example, to use the QKD in some key infrastructure like the railway or energy. Maybe at a very early stage, the end user or the customer should not take the responsibility
a first
for
buyer.
the cost.
A first,
Yes.
yeah.
And maybe some big company or the government to use it first, and to make the project mature enough for the end users. I think that's the trend of the QKD industry so far. Yeah.
So you've pinpointed to a couple of things there. First of all, there's market failure. And secondly, the role, and this is actually Europe is developing its first Quantum Act, and as QuIC we responded to that and made some suggestions. And the figure of a first buyer, but also crowding in private investors, is absolutely key. And the other things that we've suggested that really need to be addressed are things like export controls, which I think none of us have mentioned so far, but that's going to be important for the progression of our market. And if I could just come back very quickly for some final thoughts there from Kazutomo-san, please.
I'd like to tell bottlenecks rather than risks on on the standardization of quantum computing. The bottleneck is, I think, that for standardization of quantum computing it takes much time to be completed, at least 3 years. So during the process of standardization, the industry may change dramatically. So we need to bring industry-driven approach to standardization. So I think that for the time being, standardization may need to be utilized as a acceleration tool of quantum technologies and social implementation. So yeah, this is my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any burning questions from the floor? I mean, I think we've covered so many different topics. Hopefully you've found this panel as enriching as I have. Any burning questions from the floor, because we're out of time already? No. Well, it just remains for me to thank my panelists. So, Professor Jaewan Kim, professor from the QuIC Korea Institute for Advanced Studies, Professor Homer Papadopoulos, co-leader of Standards Working Group at QuIC, the European Quantum Industry Consortium, Dr. Minghan Lee, Deputy Chief Engineer of CAS Quantum Network, and Dr. Kazutomo Hasegawa, the Chair of Standardization Recommendations and Alliances at QStar and Fujitsu. And of course, I'd like to thank our hosts at TTA for the incredibly hard work that's gone into staging this event. I mean, I'm sure anyone who's ever done any event, panel, conference, birthday party for your children knows how difficult it is to get everyone aligned on stage and finishing on time. Well, 3 minutes late, but hey. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for attending the quantum session. I'm sorry for the late introduction. I'm Sejong Yoon, as introduced. Yep, and coordinator of this quantum session. Once again, I would like to appreciate Dr. Tanya and four presenters for sharing this valuable insights. If you are a seat, we will provide with a lunchbox. Enjoy your meal. Thank you.